pleasure to have you all here. I'm sorry about the food. The chef back there doesn't hurt me. So yeah, no, it's great. We love events like this. We love meeting like-minded people, entrepreneurs, hard workers, people looking for a bit of fun with tech and various different industries. And it's great to see, you know, Ireland. I just turned off my phone. Hang on a second. It's great to see this going on in Ireland actually, because when I started off my the Ivory Coast, I better call them back. When I started off my journey as a developer, as an entrepreneur, I hate to use the word about myself. As a risk taker, I think is a better description. When I started off, there was nothing in Ireland, so back in the 80s, and the IDA were the only game in town that were any source of support, or investment, or the government shoulder to lean on. And the IDA were great back then, and they're great now, albeit they put a lot of pressure on our own tech economy for resources and bringing a lot of great FDI companies in that actually, while they provide an ecosystem for indigenous tech companies, they also put a lot of pressure on us now. So I'll get to that later on when I get to CarTrawler, but I think if I were in your shoes, I think I'd probably want to hear what someone like me has done, or how how it all happened for me. I've done a number of startups, going back to the good old days. I'm a programmer by trade. I still am a programmer, and when I do my next startup, I'll be writing the code for most of that too. So that gives me a slightly different spin on the approach to startups that maybe a lot of you would have, but it also gives me an advantage in the way I think about things. So yeah, I've done a bunch of startups. The first two failed, ran out of cash. Video games. I was in video games. I wrote video games, and then I started my own company. Ran out of cash because there's no such thing as raising money. Then you have to make a profit from day one. And then I got into the travel technology sector, which is where I've been for nearly 30 years now, of building and selling businesses and buying businesses and investing in businesses and so on. And it's good because I have a particular domain advantage there in the travel space as well as the technology part, which makes my job a lot easier in terms of executing, but also in assessing risk and capability. So the business I founded back in Mexico City in 1992, I think it was a travel technology business, and I forward line really quickly, but we grew it up to about a 10 million revenue business with a 60% margin on it. We were selling middleware to big travel companies, and we then moved it back in '96 to Dublin to take advantage of the availability of tech talent in Dublin, and basically just back in Ireland. We were about 30 people then, and we grew it up to about 150 people, and then we sold it in 2003 to a big trade player. And it was first lesson in life for me then was the old timing thing. The timing of creating the business was kind of okay, but the timing of leaving and selling the business was awful. I sold the business for a quarter of what it was really worth, or that similar business has traded only 2 years previously. And the reason that was 9/11. 9/11 happened, and there was an overall decline in the tech market, particularly in the travel space. So nothing wrong with the business per se, but the revenue and the EBITDA flattened out. And obviously when the EBITDA growth flattens out in the business, your multiple goes the inverse way. So just a simple thing about timing, some business owners hold on to businesses too long, some of them dispose too early. And if there's one area where I could have done with professional advice, that would have been it. It would have been it at the earlier stages of the business, the 2 or 3 years preceding the disposal of the business. And a very important lesson for me in building a business over 12 years, all those 12 years, essentially 8 of the years were pissed away because of bad timing. And that's a really important lesson. And that lesson is get advice. Always have advice with you on the start of the journey, the whole way through the journey. Always being, hopefully, relatively unbiased advice, but nevertheless professional, external advice. the corporate M&A type, and that was very, very important. Didn't make that mistake twice, so when I sold that business, I didn't found CarTrawler, but I bought into CarTrawler in the first year. There was a couple of brothers that had a car rental company, actual physical wheels, dirt, everything, and we turned it into essentially a software business. And it was I don't know what you know of CarTrawler, but CarTrawler essentially is a tech business that is specialised in travel industry, that basically creates for lack of a better word, a marketplace for airlines to sell other products to their customers other than flights. So we sell car rental, we sell taxis, we sell anything with wheels really, and we do a lot of persuasion around it. It was interesting what Manoj presented earlier on, the stuff around influence and design thinking and behavioural economics. We've been big adopters and believers in using behavioural economics to influence conversion and optimizing display. So we do a lot of fun, easy to write tech stuff that moves the needle a little bit each time, but because we have access to about 900 million airline customers a year, but we show them product, show them content, little changes for us have a big reward in absolute terms. Anyway, so not about too much about CarTrawler, but more about me and the mix of people. We started off CarTrawler, we got the essence of CarTrawler, which was the real start of the hard growth with about 10 people. And I would say probably could have done it with 8 people, but the real core of the strategy, of the plan and the base code, the middleware was built, and our first airline was signed with those 10 people, 10 going on 15, as that airline came on board. So it was a kind of pretty big spend in terms of salary burn, but the business did not raise any finance at that point because we were lucky. It was the early days it was the Wild West of SEO, so we got all this free SEO traffic. We didn't have to buy consumers online, and we immediately went to create a B2B business out of a B2C business, simply because we've never believed in, not necessarily correctly so, we've never been big fans of scaling B2C businesses, particularly B2C marketplaces, because of the cost of acquisition of consumers and because of the low barrier to entry to buy customers on the internet. And that was the early days still of the internet and e-commerce. It was the right decision for us because that would have required us to have raised a lot of finance and would have postponed a EBITDA, any kind of positive EBITDA number for quite a few years. And it allowed us to focus purely on B2B play, and we did that very well. I think, the tech was a very key part of it. Tech is always a key part of it, but it's only really in the enabler. It's not what the essence of the business is. And it is true to say that the crux of our success was quite simply timing, number one. And timing can also be called good luck, because we didn't wait for 5 years to start the business, and we didn't start 5 years earlier, or we just happened to be ready to start the business and do what we did at the time. But if I were to say, if we started CarTrawler two or 3 years prior, or 2 or 3 years after, it wouldn't be what it is now. So you have to say that that's just not dumb luck but good luck, and you ride your luck hard. We just got lucky with that, and there's not to say we didn't take advantage of that luck. We did. We went very, very fast, and then really aggressive focus on cost, on the marketing, the nimbleness, I would say the halo we built around ourselves, whether we deserved it or not. We definitely created a halo in terms of how we did PR, how we did marketing, how we spoke to people. Every conversation had something between the lines that people were supposed to read, and we were very good at that. It was very effective. I see a bunch of very successful indigenous tech companies in Ireland doing that very well now. We certainly learned that. I think you'll hear from Morris later on. He has that skill too. It's an influencer skill. We seem to be good at it here in this economy. Anyway, so CarTrawler, since it's 14 years, we've done 2 MBOs. We did Imagine Buy-In, which was me coming in, and then subsequently myself and Mike McGurty, our previous CEO, did 2 management buyouts, and they both value the company. The valuation of the company is private. It's a private equity backed business now, but they were very successful, you know, gearing up of the business where we took on some debt in order to change shareholder bases, and each time we were riding a very strong EBITDA growth. In fact, we've always accelerated. We've always been accelerating both our top line and our bottom line very well. We still, believe it or not, don't get scales of economies that we might want in a business of our size. But the reason that is that we continually reinvest in the business, and we continually spend ahead of the curve in terms of product development that we do and people that we take on. So we're usually thinking, we're usually sitting down every year and thinking about what we would like to be in 3 years' time and spending the money to get there more quickly. And that, it hits the little bit of what we're achieving. A lot of private equity, you know, companies or banks or anyone looking at your fundamentals as you grow will be looking to see a stronger, you know, operating margin or EBITDA margin. They'll be looking to see efficiencies of scale. We've never actually cared about that much. You know, it's not that we haven't focused on it, but it hasn't been a driver for us. For ours, the driver's always been top line growth. Anyway, so that's CarTrawler. It's rock and roll business. There's 550 odd people here. Average age is 31. I bring up the average age by 8 weeks across the company. I've done the maths. Tried to get rid of as many young people as possible. So that's CarTrawler. And then what else was I talking about? Oh yeah. So anyway, it's going great, and we're all ourselves as a business. We're always looking around at different, you know, tech opportunities, both on companies. We bought 2 businesses in our past. One in Finland for 15 million quid, and the other out of a public business, an undisclosed price, called Holiday Autos, which is a big car rental brand. You know, but I don't know what size your businesses are, what size of businesses you're involved in, but M&A is a really hard way to grow a business. Far easier to grow a business organically with great product and extending product with a great team than it is to buy. No matter how sexy a business looks like to buy, it's really hard to do that. And it diverts the focus of your senior management team for a year at a time. You lose a year of focus every time you try to buy a company of scale. We bought 2 and we failed to buy 3, but that's 5 times we've tried to buy companies, and that is a huge diversion of focus. So if you're ever thinking about merging or buying your way out of things, it's really not as attractive as it seems. And for my mind anyway, the only way it works well for a business of scale is where you have a dedicated M&A function. We kind of have that in now, and we kind of do, we kind of don't, but it's somewhere that, it's one area that we've not done a good job on in terms of looking at a lot of brides, but only get to the altar with a couple, and taking a lot of time to do or not do that. And the other thing about me personally is I also am an investor, so I have about 15 investments, too many investments actually, in different stage companies, some seed stage and some A, kind of somewhere between seed and A round, that I've either invested in or I've advised them on the board. So I invest in them all, but I'm either on the board of the businesses or I'm an advisor on the businesses. And the reason I do that is that first of all, I learn a lot by talking with other people. I've always felt that mostly other people starting businesses know more about me because they're more current than I am, because I'm stained by being in one business for 14 years. But I always do get quite a lot out of that. And the same reason that you're all here, you're meeting other people, you know, there are different paces than you, there are different levels than you. So that's one reason I do it, and I'm hoping to pick up from the ashes when the business fails, a team. Unfortunate to say, but most businesses fail. And most of my investments in those businesses go down the tubes with it. It's still great, and it's a good thing to do. And then so the other thing I do is, you know, as part of that tech investment is kind of about, you know, helping the companies from a strategy point of view. So with that in mind, I try to stick just to travel technology businesses as much as I can, because I know that domain very well. And that's that. And then I was asked also to speak about the funding environment. So you know, so I get involved in a lot of mentoring things. So I'm involved with a couple of different VCs where I would mentor there, or I would challenge businesses on their business plans here in Ireland. And then in London, I worked with a couple of different private equity businesses that would see bigger scale companies that are still growing a lot, but they have a lot of momentum already, and I would get involved on the pure advisory side of those businesses. So it's really, I don't think there's one business that I've ever seen that I could say, oh, it's exactly like that other business over there. They're always different, and it's the human element that makes them different, mostly. And so what I've noticed, particularly in the Irish scene, is the ambition level is still very low in Ireland. There's still this continual, model of HBSU, Enterprise Ireland, and private investors, very common. Right? Nothing wrong with it, by the way, but I'd love to see more Irish companies be more innovative about how they raise money. And like tonight, you're going to hear a really good example of that. I was pleasantly surprised when I was asked to, host, this session of who the company, because I knew Morris beforehand, I knew his business. I didn't know Spark beforehand, but I thought it was a lovely marriage. It's quite an innovative approach to getting off the ground. I'd like to see more of that. And I'd also like to see a better connection to, Silicon Valley money or Chinese money. I don't see any Chinese money in Ireland. There should be. I don't see any. Some of it comes through family offices, but it's not, really I mean, if you spend any time in China, you know what I mean. They talk about, I've worked with businesses in China, in Shanghai, and Beijing, two different businesses, both in car rental, and they started off with $150 million seed rounds. And that's the size of that economy. And I'd love to see something like that one day in Dublin. I'd love to see a business starting up with such a sexy plan and such a great team behind it, and a belief that there's a $100 million seed round followed by 15 billion Series A, B, and so on. There's no reason that shouldn't happen here. But in order for that to happen, we need to float all the boats, and all these, 300,000 or 400,000, euro rounds need to become 2 or 3 million rounds, and there needs to be punchier valuations to allow entrepreneurs to do that without, giving away too much. So if I look at the long-term being 5-year view of the landscape here, I think in terms of government policy, taxation policy, university policy, all of these things there needs to be a confluence of things to happen to turn us into, a Lisbon or a Tel Aviv or a, San Francisco, and it isn't happening there. There's a lot of things happening, in a disjointed way. So you see great government policy about FDI and the success of IDA, but that actually hurts Indigenous business if it's not coupled with proper visa systems, proper taxation, proper incentives for Indigenous companies to operate. And Indigenous companies operate at a disadvantage to FDI companies, and that's something that as a policy we need to sort out. And then what I do see changing a little bit, I'm probably talking too much now, I'm nearly done. What I do, last thing is, a little bit of light. I've seen a number of VCs here, particularly one who I don't think I'm allowed to name because it's a secret what they're doing, but they're coupling up very tightly with Silicon Valley VCs, and they're essentially turning Ireland into an incubator for the big VCs, such that if the VCs have a nice business plan and a team, or even part of a team like a CEO, they'll export the whole thing to Ireland, and the investors here will essentially incubate the thing and be part of the risk, or invest in it alongside the bigger companies. So it's a way of breaking the big high cost of Silicon Valley. But I'll just leave you with this, the average seed raise in Ireland is less than €500,000, and in China it's over $50 million. Thank you.
Before Bobby goes, guys, I think he deserves a bigger applause than that.